Now, Namibia says it is cautiously optimistic over the recent developments in the Israel-Hamas war. President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah reacted to the latest developments during the second session of the Namibia-Botswana Bi-National Commission in Namibia. She said that the meeting came as Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, continue to endure prolonged sufferings and shortages of basic supplies. We now to talk more about this significance of the ceasefire, I'm joined by social commentator Kauapirura. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
So it's day 3 since the ceasefire was signed. How significant is it?
Well, it's now probably more around day 5 since it was signed. I think it is extremely significant. It was a milestone, let's remember, since October 7, that fateful day when there was an attack into Israeli territory, which killed, I think, over around 1,000 people plus and casualties. Life in Gaza changed for the worse. More than 40,000 Gazans were killed during this conflict. There's been a lot of disruption to life. Aid could not get in. People were internally displaced. Health facilities were destroyed. Life became a living hell in Gaza. And there were previous efforts, regional, international efforts to initiate a ceasefire, which have stalled. But obviously, this one has now stood the test of time. We are going now basically into its 5th day. And it is holding. And the big thing is that the ceasefire has been achieved. The hostilities have ceased. Aid can now get in. Hostages, I think they've started to release the hostages already in batches. And some prisoner swap must still take place. And at least some degree of normalcy can return to, to the 3 million or so Gazans who've been enduring this for the past 2 years.
Does this mean there's now peace, and how do you see the timeline of the implementation?
It doesn't mean that there is peace. All there is a ceasefire. It's just a ceasefire. This whole plan, sometimes referred to as a 20-point Trump plan, so to speak, is a multifaceted plan. It has stages, it has phases like phase 1, phase 2, and 3, and what is unfolding before us is now pretty much phase 1 of the plan. And then there's still 2 other phases that must happen. There's been some agreement on the implementation of phase 1 of the plan. There has been agreement in principle about some element of phase 2 of the plan, but not total agreement yet. So I think a lot still remains to be seen.
So there has been some talks that the ceasefire can only work with the blessing of the U.S. Are they right?
Yes, I think they are spot on. Historically, peace agreements and negotiations between Israel and Palestine has always been happening through an international or outside guarantor, somebody who guarantees the process, somebody who has leverage on the leadership of those 2 countries, somebody who commands political clout and some political support, who can also leverage on geo-economics as well. So I think it is spot on. Those 2 countries have been at war with each other for ages. They have lost trust for each other. They have been exercising the politics of revenge across centuries, and they simply cannot trust each other. And the region is also quite involved in one way or another. So I think it is right to say that the U.S. has distinguished itself as that guarantor of a peace prospect between Israel and Palestine.
Now, how far also do you see this going? Because experts were saying that, Netanyahu cannot be trusted because it will be as if Hamas won, looking at the fact that they wanted, Hamas to surrender, to the Israelis.
So when Netanyahu started the offensive, his policy pronouncement was he was going to go for the total obliteration of Hamas, the total elimination of Hamas. He clearly has not achieved those objectives. Yes, he decapitated Hamas. It destroyed their infrastructure. So many people were killed by their thousands, including non-Hamas, ordinary Palestinian citizens and residents. So from that perspective, it seemed to be a political act on Netanyahu's face. But let's also remember, Netanyahu is only able to govern through a coalition. That coalition is composed of some right-wing Israeli parties who don't subscribe to the whole idea of a 2-state, solution, who don't accept the idea that Hamas could still remain, that they could get amnesty. So I think that mistrust in Netanyahu is politically quite spot on as well. He cannot be entirely trusted given his current political makeup to commit to some of the long-term objectives of this plan.
Now, lastly, what role do you think the international community can play in ensuring that the ceasefire is not only respected, but the violence stops?
I think obviously the first thing the international community could do is obviously to maintain the momentum politically, to keep the two parties honest, to make sure that, these hostilities really cease, to make sure that Hamas is demilitarized, to make sure that Israel withdraws, from some of these areas to facilitate normal life in Palestine, but also to commit to the reconstruction agenda of Gaza. I mean, nothing is left of Gaza, totally nothing. And it's going to take billions to reconstruct Gaza, but also to continue sustaining this agenda by ensuring that all the relevant key players in the region remain involved. The international organizations such as the UN, such as the EU, also come to the party to offer guarantees that are needed to sustain the political dialogue between these two countries. I think the international community owes these countries that, because they can simply not sustain it on their own. History taught us there were so many peace efforts before, so many. All of them have come to naught.
Now, how do you see, Mr. Kauapirura, in the next 6 months, 7 months, how do you see this thing playing out?
I think this peace plan is quite fragile. It's only 5 days old. Any major incident, any violation could essentially nullify it. And then it would be back to hostilities. That means more Gazans will be killed. The Israeli government will rearm and then come back stronger. And then there's going to be disruption and loss of life. The key thing now is obviously to ensure that this aid does get in, humanitarian aid. These hostages, are exchanged, prisoners are released.
Dead or alive.
And then at least that would facilitate some trust into the remaining building blocks. But all I can tell you is that I'm not sure whether this process will last if something goes wrong.
Any final remarks on the matter?
No, obviously we hope that life in Gaza would restore to normalcy. We also hope and trust that Israel will be able to live in peace and that it would continue to have its right of existence, and that is eventually these two nations would learn to coexist and then eventually would have a two-state solution, which is far-fetched, but it does appear to be the ultimate political solution.
Mr. Sam, thank you so much for taking time to be with us here on Namibia Connects.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Well, that was Mr. Sam Kauapirura, a social commentator, just telling us about the recent developments of Israel and Hamas war, of the ceasefire that was signed. So we'll keep you updated as that story continues to unfold and more news comes in.